Welcome everybody out to Game of the Month discussion number 33. It is beginning of March 2025. So for February, we played Super Mario Land for the Game Boy. First time I've ever played this game, very interesting experience. But joining us today for this discussion is the one and only SMWiz and some fresh blood. Will, welcome both to this month's discussion.
Thanks for
Hello,
having
thanks for
us.
having me.
All right. So, Super Mario Land, this was a very interesting Mario game, I must say, and I believe the first portable one. But I think we discovered there was actually a Game & Watch one first. So, first non-Game & Watch portable Mario game. There we go.
Yep. Also, the first Mario game to not be produced or involved with Shigeru Miyamoto.
Which
Yes.
explains a lot, actually.
It does explain some stuff.
It explains so much. So I guess I'll lead us off this month. I'm feeling pretty narcissistic about it. Anyway, so again, this is the first time I ever played through this game. I had played Super Mario Land 2 back in the day. I borrowed that one from a friend and played it on a trip to Idaho back when I was a kid. So remember that one. So this was very interesting. But Will, you're new here, so why don't you lead us off next? What was your first experience of Super Mario Land?
Yeah, so I actually have a funny story with Mario Land. First of all, I say Mario.
Oh, I love it.
People make fun of me for it.
I had a
I'm going to
Canadian
be saying
brother-in-law.
Mario.
I had a Canadian
Yeah?
brother-in-law. Very used to Mario.
Yeah, so I was a young kid and I asked for Wario Land for Christmas. And I wrote it on my Christmas list, Wario Land. And I guess my mom got her hands on it. She looked it over and she said, "Oh, silly Will, he spelled Mario wrong." So she fixed it to an M. And lo and behold, I see the Christmas list and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what I want. I want Wario Land. And I got Mario Land for Christmas and popped it in. And even as a kid, I was like, this is weird. This isn't what I was expecting. Um, but I guess we could talk about that. But that was my first experience with Mario Land. Very, very funny story, I think.
Yeah, that I could see that being a point of confusion, that's for sure. All
Yeah.
right, Wiz, how about you?
So I didn't actually get to play Mario Land until around the Gen 1 Pokemon era.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have a Game Boy as a kid, but I saw the TV commercials, and man, did I want a Game Boy specifically because of Super Mario Land. The commercial for Super Mario Land was dope. If you haven't seen it, I recommend going on YouTube. It's 31 seconds long, and it is, just pure 80s marketing nonsense joy. But part of it too is I don't know if anyone else of that era, my mom would put a VHS tape in and like record a block of shows, and then you could put that in to watch. This is this is what we do nowadays as parents when we throw Disney Plus on and put on Bluey and walk away from the kids. That's what this was.
Yep.
And yeah, so I had the copy of that Mario Land commercial that I watched for many years.
Oh,
So
amazing.
That's
we
pretty cool.
visited my cousin one summer. This is around the Pokemon Gen 1 era. He had a Game Boy and he had Mario Land, and I played that. And like Will, that was not exactly what I was expecting, but I still had fun with it.
Yeah. So I believe this was like pretty much a near Game Boy launch title, right? It launched in 89, so it had to
Yes.
have been launch window-ish title. I don't know the specific release date. I didn't do the research for this one. I'm sorry. Um,
Have
but
that in front of me if you want it.
Yeah, I
uh,
think it was 89, right?
yeah, it
89
came out in
launch
89, so
title.
same year as the
80,
Game Boy in North America.
in Japan and North America, it was in 89,
Yeah.
and Europe and Australia in 90.
Okay. So yeah, just confirming that here real quick. But anyway, let's just let's structure this a little more like how I have my reviews laid out. Let's talk about the story first. So it's Mario. So the story is you are trying to rescue Daisy from the castles. Daisy, not Peach. Daisy.
Yep. Yep.
I
Princess
think this was
Daisy.
Daisy's debut, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Look, Mario moves around the ladies, okay? Pauline in Donkey Kong, Princess Toadstool in, Super Mario Brothers before she was retconned to be Peach, and then Princess Daisy for Mario Land.
So
If only
why
he
did
kept
they
his.
even do Daisy?
Well, this game takes
Oh,
place. This one doesn't take place in the Mushroom Kingdom. You're in a different land.
Okay. I
Yeah,
guess that makes
Peach
sense.
doesn't go to the different lands with you this time. But
Yeah.
No.
and it wasn't even Bowser that takes Daisy. There's no King Koopa in this one. And yes, he was known as Bowser all the way from Super Mario Brothers if you read the instruction booklet. But yeah, so I mean Bowser's not included at all. So it's
Nope.
very interesting because anyone that is familiar with my channel, I make fun of Mario so much about being a freaking narcissist murderer who just goes out of his way to murder people to get back his girlfriend who's trying to get away from him and all this other stuff. So I can't really use that here, other than he just wants to go out and be a murderer. So
Well,
I don't even know what to do with my life
the
right now.
story, when it's an alien invasion.
Yeah,
He's fighting off an alien invasion.
and we're all good killing aliens. Like that's fine. Like
Is that what it is? Because how are we supposed to know that? You see spaceships everywhere, but I guess you have to read the manual to know what's going on?
The
probably?
manual or that TV commercial I mentioned.
Okay,
true.
okay, you gotta watch the commercial.
This is
That's
the
how the
era
TV
where
commercial
manuals
opens
were
up. Is like
essential.
UFOs coming into a city, people running and screaming, the aliens invaded, and then Mario just shows up.
Okay.
It's the announcer's like, only Mario can save us. It's like, okay, because that makes sense.
I really wish I'd read the manual before playing this game now. Like I'm dead serious. I wish I'd read the manual. I just did a playthrough of Hexen for retro achievements and I read through the entire manual on that one for the first time, even though I'd beaten the game before, and I was like, oh, this would have made things so much more clear before. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Oh well.
no, it's yeah, but
That
no,
era, man.
that's really the bulk of the story. Is really that people just chilling, minding their business, and then aliens invade. And
I literally
Easy.
learned that from you just now. I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know that really either, except for the final boss being so odd.
Yeah, that was the only thing.
Yeah.
It's like, he seems to be like a space creature. I guess it's a space thing.
Yeah, it was
yeah,
weird.
he
But
kidnaps Princess Daisy so that he can make her his queen.
Of
yeah,
course.
see, at least they have taste, I guess. Anyway, regardless. So yeah, this kind of turned my expectations on their head right away, being like, oh, this isn't Bowser. This isn't just going around killing Bowser's children again, just for the sake of murder.
No,
But yeah,
alien
Pretty much.
invasion.
yeah, we can kill aliens. I don't care. Good job, Mario. Good job killing them aliens. You finally put your murdering skills to the good use. Again, read the instruction booklet for Super Mario Brothers. Bowser turned the people of Mushroom Kingdom into blocks. What does Mario spend the entire game smashing?
Yep, blocks.
Oops.
Every time you
Murder.
break a brick in Super Mario Brothers, you're killing a citizen of the Mushroom
Yep.
Kingdom.
Absolute
But you know
mass
what?
murder.
Sometimes it's really important to take that shortcut in 1-2. Okay.
And if you want to justify mass murder, do you? Anyway. So storyline not presented well at all. If you can gather, like it's very impossible to follow without the manual. So if you are playing the game, get a loose copy. Like go find a archived copy of the manual somewhere. Get read up on that, and that'll give you all the plot stuff. So that is a bit disappointing to me. I don't like when games don't contain their plot also within the actual game itself.
Yeah. It's
But
not unusual for games of the era, though.
No, it's not. It's not. Like I can't criticize it too hard about that. Like it's just a personal peeve of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm from that era, so I always read the manual, so I always was able to have the story before going in. So it wasn't as big of a deal back then. But nowadays, like going back and revisiting this stuff, like getting complete copies is out of the question. Like just out of the question. So you really need to look up the manual to get that story content now. And that's important. That's important to me. I don't know if it's important to anyone else, but that's important to me.
Yeah, I think for everyone else, it's an early 2D Mario game. Like you said, it's story's not really important. You're running around, you're jumping on turtles.
Yeah.
Story doesn't matter, but
really
you know,
doesn't.
someone like you, if you want the story, then gotta read the manual or watch the commercial, one of the two.
Yep. I need to go watch the commercial now. But
I'll drop a link to that in Discord because, like, seriously,
That'll be that
For
good,
me,
huh?
the nostalgia of it is just glorious. Seeing
Yeah,
a
I've never
commercial
seen
from
it.
'89, you're
Oh my
like,
gosh, I love old commercials.
the executives still have remnants of coke in their blood. It's just a trip.
Now going back and reading old gaming magazines, that's another one that just blew my mind when I was doing my custom Robo review a few weeks back. Oh my gosh. We lost a lot of good stuff, everybody. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
We've lost a lot. But anyway, moving on with
I was
Super
like,
Mario Land.
it's like Abed said, we're living in the darkest timeline.
Moving on with Mario Land.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
gameplay. So, this is a Mario game, so you kind of know what to expect as you jump in, but what you won't expect out of this game is just the way it feels to actually play. It is so ridiculously jank. It
Yep.
is
It is.
amazing. It feels like playing an Atari 2600 platformer where you jump and you're going up really slow and then you just instantly fall to your death. Like, what the heck was that?
Yeah, the physics in this game is very odd. It honestly, that's going to be the most challenging part of the game. It's not the level design, it's not the boss fights. It's just figuring out how Mario jumps.
Yes.
That's determines how like what your experience with this game is going to be is how much control you can figure out over those jumps.
It was so weird. I died so many times just trying to line up a jump. Like, I accidentally go a little too far off the platform, and instead of just falling to the next level, it's like, "Rrr!" Like, oh my gosh, what was that? I'm weighted. I am so
Great.
weighted.
Gravity times 10.
Yeah, I don't remember it being that bad when I was a kid. And coming back, you definitely feel that being like, this is like close to how Mario should feel, but it's clearly like a Game Boy, that like lesser quality. And so I really felt that again, being like, oh God, this is not how I remember it.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing though. Like, Super Mario Land 2 doesn't feel like that. Like, that's the thing. Like, because I played that game quite a bit, and I've revisited it a few times over the years. And I'd
Yeah, the
always
second
heard that
one.
the first one
um,
was not anywhere near as good. And I don't quite agree with that assessment. I actually do think it's a pretty good game once you get used to it, but it definitely lacks a certain Nintendo level of polish that you would have expected out of it. Like,
Yep.
that's what's so odd about it to me, because the physics being like that, they're that close, yet so
Mm-hmm.
far. Because even if they just replicated Mario Brothers for NES on it, in terms of the physics, like, gold, good. But
Yeah,
Yeah, I
part of
don't.
that problem is that you have fewer pixels available to you in the Game Boy screen, so you can't do a one-to-one on it. So
no,
you have to adjust it in some way. Though I feel like they should have continued fine-tuning it because, to Will's point, it feels off and it's kind of hard to explain. But like while you're just playing it, especially if you put a lot of time into the NES, you're like, this isn't moving the way that it feels like it's supposed to move.
yeah,
It feels unnatural, like you're fighting against it or it's fighting against you.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is that I don't know if they could have made it one to one with a Game
no,
Boy limitation, but you're saying Mario Land 2, that felt better.
that
But
feels much better.
I'm also thinking that Mario Land 2 must have came out like around when Mario World came out, because it kind
Hmm.
of looks kind of similar there. So they
Yeah,
probably figured
Yeah,
out the Game Boy architecture, whatever. They got used to some tricks of getting it
yeah,
to run
yeah.
better.
and I
They
mean,
also used the mechanic from Mario World where you can do a spin jump and break some blocks
yeah, and I
in
mean,
Yes,
number
there's
yep,
two.
they did
also the
that.
But
fact that it's also much more zoomed in for Mario
it's
Land
more it
2. It's
yeah, like
not,
Mario Land 2, Mario takes
yeah,
up a significant chunk of the screen.
yeah, it's a much more zoomed in experience, so you have to explore more around. You don't get the entire world overview like you do
Yeah,
with Mario
like
Land 1.
I I don't like playing Mario Land 2 so much because it feels claustrophobic. Like
It
it feels
does.
like
It really
you
does.
can't see anything. Like
No.
Mario's just on the screen and then you move and you're like, oh, there's a wall there.
And there's an enemy
There's a
there that,
ceiling.
yeah.
There's an enemy there. There's a trap or a pit. It's like
Hmm.
so
It's,
it's like running feels super dangerous in Mario Land 2.
yeah, it does.
But
But I mean, there's pros and cons to both approaches. Like, I
yeah,
actually don't mind like the really questionable sprites and look of Mario Land 1.
Mhm.
it all comes down to just how it felt to play to me.
Yeah.
If they had nailed down the movement and the physics of the jumping a bit more, polish that in, like I'd have no complaints about the game whatsoever, other than it's kind of short. But
I
even then, it's a Game Boy game.
yeah,
It's meant to be short.
I'd still say short because yeah, like whereas we got the original Super Mario Brothers has 8 worlds with 4 levels in each one for 32 levels.
Mhm.
This has 4 worlds with 3 levels each for 12.
Yep.
So it's barely larger than a third in the term of level count for Super Mario Brothers 1. But yeah, it's a Game Boy game. You have less space, but even then, I think the real issue is that it was brand new hardware and they hadn't figured out how to optimize things yet. Because when you look at like what you get like world-wise in a Pokemon game, or even what they were able to pull off with Super Mario Land 2, just a couple
Castlevania
years,
games.
2, 3 years later, like they, is probably a combination of time restriction and unfamiliarity with the hardware.
Yeah, definitely. Especially considering it was probably a launch window game.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know the specific release date. I'm too lazy. That was what Zachary's good for.
Yeah,
um,
I believe this was a launch title game. I did some reading up on it, to prep for this. So, because we knew Zachary wasn't going to be able to be here, so someone's got to be able to share a few statistics. Like this being the second best selling Game Boy game in '89 behind Tetris.
dude,
But that's not
Tetris,
fair because Tetris was bundled with the
dude,
console. So,
best bundle game ever. I
Mhm.
put so many hours into Game Boy Tetris, man. I love Game Boy Tetris.
Yeah, I mean that's a testament of Tetris versus Mario Land, where Tetris people are still playing that game to this day. Mario Land, we're talking about it here, being like, "Hey, remember that janky weird game?"
That janky weird Mario game that would have benefited
Yeah,
greatly from having its original creator on board.
yeah,
probably.
That's honestly what it would have been. Like if Miyamoto had been a part of that, like none of those movement issues would have been a thing, I feel like. But I mean, history is what it is.
Possibly. Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, I agree. This game is like I think I beat it in like 30 minutes,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
Mhm.
Uh then again, I knew what I was going into. I knew what to expect. And kids, when I was a kid, I couldn't beat it. I wasn't good enough. I think there's like a part with the rocks where you have to jump on the rocks,
Oh
and I
yeah.
World
just
3.
couldn't do it.
Yep.
Um, so a kid, you could probably get quite a lot of, playtime out of
Replay.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even as an adult, what are you? You're on the bus, you're playing it for like 20, 30 minutes. If you beat it, you beat it. You know,
Yep.
it's serviceable. I feel like this game is serviceable. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's all serviceable.
And it runs smooth. Like that's the important thing. Like it runs very smooth. Like it's not doesn't have performance issues. That's not going to be an issue. And
True.
it offers a decent challenge. It's funny because when I was doing this playthrough, I started it and I beat World 1. I was like, I don't really want to play this right now, so I stopped. And I come back a few days later, I beat World 1 again. I was like, no, I still don't really want to play this. And then finally I was like, okay, I need to just force myself to finish this. I was like, oh, that was really short. Like why didn't I just force myself to finish this like last 2 times?
Yeah. Crazy short.
But how about the twist that there are freaking shmup levels in this game? I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
dumbfounded. I was like, what the crap am I doing in an airplane?
I
2,
like
3,
those.
and 4, 3.
I like
Was
That
those. That was
I was
smart.
dumbfounded when all of a sudden
was
I'm in a shmup. I was like, what the crap am I playing?
some of the best Mario content ever.
It was great. I did like it. See, the shmup sections ran
Plus,
perfectly. Like they were
because
great.
plus,
They were
like those are some of my
fantastic.
favorite levels. Like honestly, 1, 3, 2, 3, and 4, 3 are the best levels in the game, in my opinion.
All
Those
the
are all
shmups,
three. They were all
all the
those.
shmup levels.
Yeah, 3,
I
3
only remember
sucks,
two of
but
them.
there's no 1, 3 is
Airplane
the like
submarine.
inside the Sphinx pyramid level,
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah, I
then
remember
2,
that.
3, and 4, 3 are your shmup levels.
With like the seahorse and then the
The
final boss, right?
seahorse and the final boss. Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
really the dual boss. So because you have the 4, 3 boss and then the boss of the game, you fight them back to
True.
back.
Yeah,
True.
that was fun.
Yeah. I mean, I liked them. It's like all of a sudden you're playing this now, and it's a break from the regular platforming. I think the regular platforming would have been like, oh, again, let's get through it. But little breakup, right?
Yeah. And
Well,
again,
Yeah.
considering the platforming doesn't feel super great, it brings the whole experience up a little bit. Unless you absolutely despise shmups, um, then maybe it wouldn't. But like for me, it was like, dude, this like put the game up like a whole other tier in my enjoyment level here.
yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
partly too, because even if you don't like shmups, it's the easiest shmup you're ever gonna play.
It is. It really is.
So,
Like they're not
yeah,
difficult.
no, but they're lots of fun, And I love we haven't talked sound yet, but when you get to 2-3 and you're in the submarine, dude, that is a great soundtrack. And it feels like a little bit of a remix and a little bit of an original composition from the water theme from Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah. I can
I don't remember
I
what it
can
sounds like.
I can hear that now
You could hear it, yeah.
vaguely.
And unfortunately, we can't play this because we don't want to get DMCA'd on
No, I
YouTube.
want to keep my
Yeah.
videos monetized right now. Sorry, I'm greedy.
Yeah,
I will say though, there's like what, maybe 4 or 5 songs in the whole game,
yeah.
maybe 6.
But the
Not the
soundtrack
most
for this
variety, but it
game,
works. It's not
the
a bad
soundtrack for this
soundtrack.
game is awesome.
Yeah, it's not a bad
Mostly,
soundtrack.
You think so?
I mean, look, well, at least so the main theme, I think the one that you get like in World 1 for most of World 1 is awesome. The one that like a lot of modern people will refer to as the Super Bowl theme. It's what they play when you get Super Bowl in Mario Maker 2. That's a great song. The water theme I thought was good. The cave / Egypt theme is really good. I do not care for the song from World 2. I think that one's very bland and just kind of obnoxious. When you think about like the level with the jumping seahorses and everything, I don't like that theme song. Um, I don't know what to think about the theme from World 4 when you get to the kind of like East Asian sound where you're like,
You're
if a
fighting the
white guy did
Japanese
this,
girls.
yeah, I was like, if like a Western company had done this, I'd be questioning how sensitive they are culturally. But it came from Japan, so I'm like, okay, I guess. I don't know what to make of this.
Uh,
Like it kind of felt like a caricature of the culture a little
well,
bit.
just remember that Japan created 1941 series
Yeah.
where you're playing
Yeah.
as,
Oh, I
a
know.
Westerner killing Japanese people, so they obviously don't care.
Oh my god.
It's a World War II shmup.
Yeah,
So yeah, the 1941 series, which
yeah.
one
Great
of
shmup.
my favorite NES games. When you're
Great
too
shmup.
little to understand the significance, you're like, yeah, I'm just an airplane shooting down other airplanes. This
I
is
know, right?
cool.
Yeah, exactly.
And you get a little older, and you're like, oh, there's some undercurrent here that I was not aware of as a 5-year-old.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that game or series.
Oh yeah,
I
great
guess,
series.
thankfully.
Oh no, great series, great
I
shmup.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
great shmup, and I mean, Capcom's not afraid of it. They've included it in their arcade collections.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, they only improved upon it over the years,
yeah,
with sequels and stuff. And then I mean, they even did that 1942 like remaster remake thing on Xbox 360, PS3. So that
Yeah.
was interesting. But
Cool.
anyway,
anyways,
beside the
Mario
point.
Land. Yeah.
Uh,
But it was sounding like Will, like you didn't enjoy the soundtrack for this one.
It's not that I didn't enjoy it, it's just that it felt like there weren't enough songs.
Yeah.
Like the first song I think of is like the first level one, which plays how many levels does that play?
Several, maybe
Yeah,
like
several.
half the game.
yeah,
And it's a good song. I like the song, but it gets to the point where you go to the next level and you're hearing the
repetitive.
soundtrack again. You're just like, oh man, this song again. And I guess it doesn't have that same power as like the original Mario
Mhm.
Brothers has, where when that comes on, you're like, oh hey, I love this song. And you could hear it a million times and not get tired of it.
So would you say that it would be forgettable then, in a sense?
It's not forgettable. It just kind of gets on my. It annoys me a
It
little
isn't
bit
as
hearing
fun
it
on
too much.
repeat.
Yeah, exactly.
Like kind
Like
of like
again, it's a good song.
like when you start playing Pokemon the first time, that battle theme is awesome. But when you're a couple hours into the game,
Volume down.
we're turning the volume off because I'm sick and tired of hearing it.
Yep.
That's like exactly it.
That's
And
what it is.
the one song I really like is the credits song. When the credits song comes on, I think that's like a fun little bop. That's a little cheerful, celebratory song there.
Nice.
And for some reason, that one stuck with me. Other than that, yeah, the music's fine. Didn't blow me away though. But again, Game Boy game. You know, what are you gonna
Yeah.
do?
Is what it is with that sound chip.
Yeah.
So sound effect wise, I think the sound effects in the game worked out really, like they work out okay. They work out well enough. There's one thing that I will criticize the crap out of this game though. What did they do to the star power up song, man? They just turned it into that circus theme.
You don't like the can?
I was gonna say it's the
It's,
can.
it's the can,
No,
Yeah.
which yes is a
no,
very
I
odd
know,
choice.
I know.
Like,
It's just,
Yeah.
like
what were they
like,
thinking? You have
like
a star theme.
you have a star theme, and so it's like I don't know if it was too difficult to encode for the Game Boy, if it sounded wrong or something. I have no idea.
That's what I'm thinking.
Or
Oh.
somebody forgot until the end and they just didn't have time. Like I don't
It
know.
was a
Like, I mean,
placeholder, and they left it in the final game.
It must have not sounded right when they were doing like the NES, like dun, 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 dun. It must have not sounded right, and they were like, "Well, this works. Why not? It's royalty free. There you go." But it's also like just come up with your own jingle, right?
Yeah,
It's
seriously,
like you guys got musicians.
seriously. Put Koji
yeah,
Kondo
then-
on that
I
ASAP.
was like, this is what I was gonna say. I was like, what was Cody Konjo doing? It's like, what game were you busy on at the time?
God, who knows?
Yeah, and then
But-
the other thing with the Star song is that you have to listen to it to know when it's gonna run out. If you're
Yeah.
not listening to the song,
Yeah,
you can't do it visually. You just kind of have to guess
Yeah.
with that.
And I mean, that's
Yeah.
really a limitation of the hardware, right? Because you don't have the color display. So you
Yeah.
know, what else could you do?
yeah.
I mean, maybe an icon it would have like blinked as it was about to expire. I don't know.
I
Yeah.
mean, even have your character sprite link to potentially, but I mean,
Except the
It's-
character sprite blinking would have been awful because you're trying to make jumps and go fast while you have the star power.
that's
if you're
true. It's a
Blinking
low
in and out of
refresh rate.
existence while you have to do these jumps. The star would feel more like a punishment than a power up.
That's true. No, that would have been a bad idea. That's definitely true. But
Yeah.
no, it's saying something about the game though. At least that's the biggest complaint about its audio work is that what the frick did you do to my boy?
I thought when you
That's
hit
my
the
boy.
bosses, and they make those little squeals, I thought
Oh,
that's
those are
pretty
hilarious.
strange. sound
Those are
effects.
great. Oh my gosh, I was playing it on my TV out in the living room because I was doing it with Retro Achievements. So I was doing it out on my TV playing it, and John just goes, "Man, the sound they make when you hit them is so great, so funny. Can you die and do it again so we could keep hearing it?" And I was like, "No, I'm not gonna die and do it again. Like, I agree with you. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not dying and
Yeah.
doing this again." Um, but one thing we failed to mention previously, the game actually has two difficulty levels. It has normal and hard mode.
Yep.
And so I played it on normal. I was going to go and do another playthrough on hard, but I just didn't want to.
Wait a minute. How do you unlock hard? How do you even set it up for hard?
I think you have to do like a button combo on the menu when you're starting it. I don't quite remember.
Why
there
would
is
they
a
hide
hard
that?
mode.
How are we supposed to know?
Read the manual, I guess. I don't know.
Read the manual. Watch the commercial. It's in the
I
commercial.
don't actually even know if that's in the manual or not.
I don't know either, but I do know that
Uh,
there is a hard mode.
It's like a cheat
There
code
is a
then or
hard
something.
mode, yeah.
That's odd.
Yeah, so it's not explained well. But
Huh.
another thing we failed to talk about, though, is just the power-ups that the game has. There's basically none. There's the
Super
Power
mushroom.
Ball, which is essentially like firepower, but it just bounces around instead. So it's a friggin' bouncy ball that you throw out and kills everything.
Yeah. So yeah, you get
Yeah.
the flower and it makes you into Super Ball Mario.
Yeah.
Is kind of funny because it's not called the Super Flower or Super Ball Flower. It's literally just called Flower, and then
Yeah,
it
it
turns
was
you into
weird.
Super Ball Mario.
It was a weird power up, but I could appreciate it. I like being able to ricochet it off in angles and hit things that were above me. Like, that was cool. The fact that it would collect coins was really cool. You could use that to get to some areas you couldn't normally jump to, so I thought that was cool. And then use it to kill bosses. So like it was very useful power up, but just very limited in the scope of what you get, because you get the mushroom and then that. So it's kind of reminiscent of the original Super Mario Brothers, where you only get the 2 power ups and then the Starman. So like it's not the lowest power up count we've ever seen in the Mario franchise. It ties the original in that regard, but just I don't know what I was expecting, to be honest, but I wasn't really expecting it to be so bare bones. But like I guess it made sense.
Yeah, looking back, it feels like they were trying to do the Fire Flower, and they just kind of made this, and they were like, "That's pretty good. Let's do
It
this."
was a happy coincidence. It bounced around the
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, I'm curious to
Let's
know,
keep
like,
that.
how long. Yeah, I wonder how long it took for them to develop this game, because it feels like it was done in like under a year. Like they made a Mario game, put it on Game Boy, and they were like, "Cool, that works."
I mean, dev times were quite short back then overall. There's obviously exceptions to that, but
Yeah.
I don't imagine this one took that long to develop.
Yeah, it feels like half a year or something like
I don't
that.
know. I
Yeah.
don't know. It might be interesting
But
to look up the history for the game
it's
one day.
it is funny because if nothing else, like coming out in '89. So because you mentioned that it's on par with the original Super Mario Brothers, but in '89 we already had Super Mario Brothers 3, which
Did that one
has
come out in '89? I thought that one came out
uh
in '90 in the U.S.
I don't know.
we're gonna double check. I
Yep,
believe it
yep.
came in '88. Came out in
88.
'88 in Japan and North America in '90.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So I mean,
Hmm.
the game did
but
exist.
the game
Yeah.
existed,
Yeah,
and
the
that's the thing.
game
So
did
Japan
exist.
had it. Japan had it before Super Mario Land came out.
Yeah, and there's a
And whether
crap
or
ton
not
of
it's
power ups in that
released,
one.
it's developed internally, right? And you can have your teams talking to each other. So it is interesting that a choice was made not to include any other power-ups, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really weird now that you mention it.
But I
Right.
mean, the scope of Mario Land is so much smaller than the scope of Mario 3. Like, the scope of
Yeah.
Mario Land is to
Oh
be,
yeah.
we're going to take Super Mario Brothers that you love and we're going to portableize it. And
Hmm.
so,
Yep.
I mean, it makes sense with what they
They're gonna
included.
portableize it and strip out a lot of things and make things very strange, is what they did. Because you jump on a Koopa and you're expecting to hit the Koopa shell, and the Koopa shell explodes, and you're like, "What?"
That
That's
got
because
me,
But
it's
it
not a
makes
that
Koopa.
got me that got me like 3 times because I was just
Yeah.
like, bump, and now I'm going to get, what?
And once again, it's the developers going, "Well, we can't really do that, so we'll just make him explode." So, and it's like, okay, sure,
Yeah.
right? Like that's all that is.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I
Well,
say,
it's like
this would be a very interesting game to learn the development history of, because there's just so
Yeah,
many strange choices that were made. But I mean, at the same time, they made it so you could run across one space blocks with a space cliff between them, like in the originals and all the subsequent games. I mean,
I gotta
that
bring
was
one thing up.
implemented, and like that's cool that that was implemented. And then we have to jump to these floating platforms, and then we fall through them because the collision detection's a bit iffy. Well, that's
Yeah.
a lot less fun. Thank you for that.
I gotta bring one thing up. One thing that is kind of, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, maybe isn't that crazy, but I hate it when you're going forward and you go, "Oh, let me go back to get something," and it just is like you can't.
Yes, it
You're
is
you're stopped.
again a relic of Super Mario Brothers 1, where once you
That's the
progress past a certain point, you can't go back.
Yeah, which is
And
like, man,
yeah,
yeah.
and I mean,
How
you
many
miss out
mushrooms
on
did you lose that
things.
way?
You can miss out on things that way,
yeah,
like getting to the top of the pyramid level. If you don't get the spring lift elevator thing on the left side of the screen that puts you up and above, and you get all those coins up there.
Yep.
yeah. I
So
think they got creative with it and they tried to go the route of like, it's not a bug, it's a feature. You have to pick which one to go through, and now you're stuck going through, whatever way you pick there.
yeah.
Hmm.
So
And I mean,
I guess
again, it
that's
calls
kind of
back to
cool.
Super Mario Brothers 1. And I think that's all this game was trying to be. This is Super Mario Brothers 1 for portable,
Yep.
but its own twist on it. You get a
Totally watered
bouncy
down.
ball instead of fireballs. You get weird jumps and
Spaceships and submarines.
yeah, you get shmups
Yeah.
instead of extra out of
You
platforming level. I
you
don't
don't
even.
get
I
Peach, you
don't
get
even.
Daisy. All right.
Oh my gosh! I mean,
Yeah.
poll it for the commenters, Peach or Daisy. Let us know.
And here's a silly little, maybe not conspiracy, but people are like, are you playing as Mario? Are you playing as Luigi? Because it's Daisy. But it's like it's Mario Land.
It's
You're playing
called
as
Mario
Mario,
Land.
right?
Yeah, it's
But
Mario.
at that point they
Well,
were the same sprite, right? So I guess you could use your
Pretty much.
imagination either way.
yeah.
Uh,
Unless you read the instruction manual and it tells you that Mario hears about the invasion and decides to go deal with it.
There you
oh,
go.
Daisy.
Yeah, which
And
is
what
really
is up
what's
with
so
that?
funny too, because he's got no connection to her. But when you go to rescue her, and granted, so I don't speak Japanese. I imagine this is probably a translation choice or something. But like when you go and defeat a boss, and he goes, "Oh, Daisy," it's like that sounds like they know each other. It sounds like there's some familiarity there.
Oh, Mario. Mario knows
Yeah,
everyone.
like
Yeah, that always confused me too. Is it would say, what would it say? It would say,
Oh, Daisy.
it
thank you,
says, "Oh,
Mario.
Daisy."
And then it says, oh, Daisy. So does that mean that Daisy is saying thank you, Mario? Oh? Or is like what is it communicating to us? I never understood that.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, because the first three worlds, when you beat them, Daisy turns into an enemy sprite.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the real Daisy, so I think it's Mario going, oh, Daisy.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. Mario gets bamboozled like 3 times. His recon is horrible. He's really got to do more research on where she is.
Yep.
Like, what are you doing,
He's
Mario?
not very bright, I'm sorry to say. He's just kind of a mass murderer. Not a very good one in the intelligence department. He's just a very blunt
Yeah.
instrument about it.
That's the
Yeah.
Star Wars meme. Oh boy, here I go, kill it again.
uh, but just to touch on visuals again, really quick, this game is running on a Game Boy screen, so it is incredibly low res. The Game Boy LCD provided a lot of ghosting on this one, which I think kind of helped amplify a sense of movement speed to it. When you play that on modern LCD, that's kind of lost unless you turn on LCD ghosting and blurring effects on your preferred emulator or something. And I turned those on and it made the game look a lot cooler to me personally. I liked it. And then of course the Game Boy screen, original Game Boy screen, very green. But if you have a Game Boy Pocket, it's black and white. But the green really gave it a more unique identity, so I like playing it on the original Damage Game Boy, as I like to call it.
And then if you throw it into a Super Game Boy, you can throw in some reds and things. Really get a lot of
Yeah,
diverse contrast.
the custom color palettes, because it didn't
Yep.
have Super Game Boy support, obviously being a launch game. But the Super Game Boy did let you customize color palettes of the 4 available colors
Yep.
that were on the screen. So that'd be curious to play around with. I
Yeah,
didn't even think about doing
played it.
that.
I played it on Switch Online, and I don't know if that's just kind of like the Game Boy player kind of colors there, but it felt almost like they kind of went back and did some rudimentary colors there, serviceable again.
Yeah, it depends on
So,
what setting you have, because you can make it use have the setting to mimic original feel that you can enable that will add in the LCD grid and some image ghosting.
hmm.
So it's nice that that feature is included.
Yeah, I
But
guess I didn't go into the settings like that.
yeah. I mean, you can make this game look any way you want nowadays. Like, one of the nice things about modern emulation and playing it on a Super Game Boy,
Yeah,
even if you want to do original hardware. Game Boy
I don't know if
Color,
you're
probably be able to select different color palettes with the D-pad while you're booting the game up. So different things
yeah.
like that.
I don't know if
Um,
you're aware, somebody actually made like a DX version of this game where you can play as Mario and Luigi, and it's more in line with what you expect from a Mario game.
I
So,
will want to check that out
it's
actually
interesting.
then.
Yeah, it's pretty
That's
interesting.
cool.
Yeah, I kind
Yeah,
of want to check
full
that out now.
color.
ROM
Yeah,
hacking community to the
ROM hacking
rescue.
community, man. I
yeah.
remember Metroid 2 DX. That was fun. Um, But yeah, so again, it mimics the feel of the original Super Mario Brothers. So you have the entire screen visible at a time. Mario's sprite is really pathetic to look at, but it's passable. Enemy sprites are pathetic to look at, but they're passable. You know what an enemy is. Um, like details and visual details in these sprites are pretty crap, but I mean, it all conveys what you need to know out of it. So can't really fault it for it.
I mean, it felt pretty. I think it's against contemporary games, it's not bad. It's definitely not going to live up to later Game Boy games or other handhelds. But
No.
you know we were still you mentioned Atari 2600 earlier. It's like when you're playing those games, your imagination is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Oh yeah. I love my combat tanks, man.
Yep.
H the turret out of
Yep.
it, like
H the turret out of it.
love my combat
Mhm.
2600 tanks. Great. Oh
Yeah.
man.
I'm thinking with this game, I think the only reason that you'd play this game, like modern times, would be either for nostalgia. Oh, I played this as a kid. Let's see what it's like again, or curiosity. And that's really no one's really recommending. Oh man, you got to play Mario Land. That's a
No,
gem.
definitely not. It's
Yeah.
not even, I don't think it's even considered among the top like 20 Game Boy games. Game
Nah.
Boy had an impressive library of games, man.
It did.
Yeah.
And this one sold well. I mean, I was looking the
Second best
those
selling
numbers.
game.
So yeah, well, at 89,
Oh, okay, 89.
it outsold, or even total. I think it was like live. We're going blah 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 blah. Super Mario Land, second best 1989 release in North America, behind Tetris, and it went on to sell more than 25 million copies, which was more than Super
Wow.
Mario Brothers 3.
Dude, that's
This
more than
game sold
freaking
more.
that's more than friggin' Spider-Man on PS4. That's
Oh
more
my
than a
God.
modern console exclusive.
Wow.
Yeah, dude, it was a console mover. Like that's the thing I told you. Like I saw
Wow.
that commercial as a kid, and I wanted a Game Boy
Wow.
specifically for Mario Land.
But I mean, the Game Boy
The hype
hardware
was real.
was a huge, successful system line. Like,
Oh yeah. Oh no,
what is
for
it? It's
sure.
still like the 5th best-selling hardware of all time right now. Something like that. Like, it's something up there.
I think it's top 10
It's
with the modern gen consoles. It got bumped. I think with Switch getting as high as it did.
yeah. I think Switch is what knocked it down to like 5th because I think
Some,
it outsold. I'm pretty sure it outsold PS1 even.
The Game Boy?
Yeah.
OG Game Boy?
Yeah.
Or does that count Color too?
It counts all the Game Boys.
so yeah, because it what they do is they lump Game Boy and Game Boy Pocket together because it's the
And Game
same
Boy Color.
internal. Yeah, a lot of times Game Boy
And a
Color
lot of times
too.
Game Boy Color usually.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, it depends. Sometimes they split them, sometimes they lump them. Game Boy
Yeah.
Advance is definitely its own thing.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure like with all of them combined, I think it's like 5 or something. I don't know. We could be actually in the comments. That's fine. But it was a
Yeah.
really hot selling system just because of the price point. Like it was like what, like $90 when it came out. Like it was very affordable. And games for it were a lot cheaper than console games. Like Game Boy games were often just like $30. So it was a lot better than console games. So I knew a lot of kids that the Game Boy was the only system they owned.
That's how I got into Nintendo, was with a Game Boy and Pokemon. Everyone liked Pokemon. I got Pokemon. Now I got a Nintendo console. Let's try out Mario. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, but 25 million copies of this game like that is nuts, considering the time. Like considering this is
That's
the
wild.
early 80s or late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
But you know what else I'm thinking now is
5 million copies.
what else?
Oh my
What else
gosh.
was there? What other handheld consoles were there? You know,
In '89, nothing. But shortly after, we had the Atari Lynx, the Neo Geo Pockets, we had the Game Gear, we had TurboGrafx
Swan.
Express.
Wonder Swan in the 90s.
Yeah, Wonder Swan.
But
I mean,
yeah, I
nothing
mean, that's the
touched
thing, it's
Nintendo.
like, Nintendo basically when they came out with the Game Boy was just competing against themselves,
Yeah.
because the Game and Watch series.
Yeah, and I mean, you had those Tiger
And
Electronic things.
Tiger Electronics that would come pre-programmed with a single game on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
oh my god.
and their
Remember
crappy
having
little
maybe 2 of those?
crappy little screen things that would.
You didn't even know what you
What
were doing.
what about video football?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
But I mean, the Game Boy, like, just a testament to just revolutionizing an industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It came out, it was such a good idea. It was selling like hotcakes.
Yeah, everyone was trying to copy it and expand on it, and while there was some ideas and concepts that worked a lot better than the Game Boy itself, none actually matched it. Like, look
Yep.
at the poor Game Gear. Like, the Game Gear was like, dude, this is a Game Boy on crack. You get a color screen, you get all these different colors. Like, the Game Gear had like a bigger color palette than the Game Boy Color, I'm pretty sure. And
Yeah, Game Gear.
and it was backlit, and it's like, look at all this cool stuff, and then it's like, but it takes 6 AA's and they last 2 hours.
yeah.
Yeah.
That thing drank double A's, and double A's. Like, even today, it's not like a double A is a very cheap commodity, but back then in the '90s, like, they were ridiculously overpriced versus like other things you'd get at the grocery store.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
batteries
why
were expensive, man.
that's why I had a freaking Genesis AC adapter that I had plugged into my Game Gear, and I'd just go sit next to the wall outlet and play it. Like, I never played my Game Gear in handheld mode, just because of
Yeah.
how often the batteries would die. And I mean,
And
that's
then at that point, you're like, let me just play my Genesis or Super Nintendo.
oh no, I loved my Game Gear. Don't get me wrong, but
Oh yeah.
but it's what thankfully made me not so pissed off about the ROG Ally battery life being crap. I just plug that into a wall outlet and plug it in and play, and I'm happy because that's how I played my Game Gear.
I was like, hold on, you're telling me that like 4 hours isn't good enough for you? It's like, you're an
Not on a
adult. You don't
good
even
day.
have that much game time. Okay, don't pretend you got 4 hours to
On a
game.
good day, I might.
You have kids. You don't got 4 hours to play games unless you're staying up 4 hours after they go to bed. Look,
Oh man. No, see, I have my
Ew.
ROG Ally settings cranked to the max, so I get like 2 hours out of that thing. All the time, 100% power. Let's go. I don't want no
I got a
7.
screen this big. I want it in 4K. Okay.
I don't want no 7-watt TDP. I want my full 30.
Oh, ridiculous. But yeah,
Uh,
anyway, Super Mario Land.
yeah,
Yeah, I
Super
mean,
Mario Land.
the thing sold like hotcakes.
Yes, it
And,
really did. That boggles my mind. Like, that's better than almost every exclusive that has come out in the last 15 years for Xbox and PlayStation. That's nuts.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, it's just kind of standard Nintendo fare, right?
It
When you
is.
have your
It
you have
really
your
is.
Nintendo launch titles that drive hardware.
That's true.
True. Yep.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and then you have a
25
chance to
million.
sell
That
it from
beats-
day one.
Dude, 25 million beats Super Mario 64, I'm pretty sure. Like, I'm pretty sure that beats Super Mario 64. Like, that's not okay. Like, that's like, I'm sorry, that's not okay right now. Hold on.
He's like
Hold
the,
on.
the rage. He's
Hold
like,
on.
He's feeling the
Hold on.
blood boil. Like he's like, yeah, but
Hold
you know
on.
what? Also, here's the thing: Mario 64, an N64 was a lot more money than a Game Boy, and Mario 64, the cartridge was a lot more money than Mario Land. Like,
True.
there's some simple economics at play here.
True. And there's probably a lot of kids that wanted Wario Land that wound up getting Mario Land.
Dude, yeah. Super
See,
Mario
that's one,
64
okay?
only
That
sold 12 million.
is not honest, okay? 24.9 million honest.
Okay, it's close enough.
Okay.
But yeah, Super Mario 64 only sold 12 million.
Wow.
So it doubled Super Mario 64 sales. And I mean, yes, the Game Boy
Coming out 7
obviously
years
tripled
before.
the total N64 sales, but
Mhm.
like, still.
Yeah, I had no
mean,
idea.
Would it make you feel better if we looked at it as like a percentage of units sold? I mean, there's probably a higher attach rate for the N64 on Mario 64
There is.
than there is on Mario Land and the Game Boy.
Yeah, because
True,
12
yeah.
million out of like 33 million console sales is a lot more than 25 million out of 100-something million console sales.
Yeah.
Not by much, but it is. So, yes, that is... Thank you for that little can of worms we just dug down. Like, that's mind-boggling. Okay. Yeah.
Anyways, that's it. I don't think this is a bad game. Like, the jank jumping aside, it's a product of its time, and so yeah, like the industry has advanced leaps and bounds since then. So, if you're a first time player, it's gonna be rough, I think. But I think if you go into it, it's kind of like when you go watch like a classic Hollywood movie you've never seen before. If you just go into it understanding what you're getting into, like I think it's an okay experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Like my biggest
Would you give it a
complaints,
rating?
obviously, maybe we could give this one a rating in a little bit. But
Yeah.
I mean, my biggest complaints is just the first time you feel the friggin' jumps, or you try to walk slowly off a ledge and feeling the just insane 20 million times gravity shift hit your character. Like that is the hardest part of the game. Once you know that's going to happen, there's some collision jank on a couple of platforms, whatever, you can get used to that. um I still think it's better than Donkey Kong's collision jank, but that's a drive by for another time. um and then what they did to my poor star power up song. uh
The
But other than that,
man.
like visuals, is what it is. Like everything is understandable, so that doesn't bother me. And then it is short, but it's a Game Boy game, so I'm not going to fault it for that because that is what it was going for. Like if
Mhm.
it was a
Yeah.
game that obviously
And
felt missing stuff and was short because of it, that would be a different story. But that's not this.
yeah,
Yeah.
and with that too, when we talk about shortness, and we've mentioned several times, kind of like portable Mario One. I don't know what the code is for the home screen, but beating the game also gives you access to the hard mode, kind of like it does with Super Mario Brothers One,
Okay.
where you
That
can
would make
start
more
a new
sense, yeah.
game and you get, the enemies swapped out and stuff. You don't have, your Goombas replaced with Buzzy Beetles and things.
Yeah,
Mm.
So,
that makes more sense.
Yeah,
All right.
definitely.
All right. But any final thoughts on the game, Will?
It's all serviceable. That's all I could think is that you play it once, you beat it, you're done with it, not much replayability. Yeah, it's a cool look into that time period, history of Mario if you want to look at it that way. But yeah, it's okay. That's what I would say. It's okay.
All right. Do you want to give it a final grade?
Uh on a scale from 1 to 10,
Sure.
I'd
Or
give
eight
it like a 5, like a 4 or a 5,
out of
right?
10?
Yeah,
Okay.
like there you go.
All right.
What are you guys thinking?
uh, you know, at the time when I played it, loved it. And again, you're judging it against contemporaries. So like back in the day, like it was probably like a 3.5 or a 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
In a modern scale, yeah, I mean it's probably like somewhere between 5 and 6 out of 10. I think,
Mhm.
See, I'm
it's
feeling a
it
lot more generous than both of you.
Really?
Why don't you finish your
mostly
thought, Wiz?
mostly no, I was gonna say it's like Tr- yeah, I mean that might be harsh. Maybe it's a 6, 6.5. I think it's for me. What pulls it down is the kind of janky jumping. But I mean, like when you're playing a game whose character was originally named Jumpman, getting the jump down kind of feels important. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's and so like for me, like I I really enjoyed this game, but it like you can't be like honest about it and say and not comment on the janky physics.
Yeah. So for me, I'd be like, yeah, this is a solid 7 playthrough experience. Like, nice, short, sweet. That kind of goes both ways on the scale for it. Graphics, a little bit both ways. And then again, it's the jump mechanic that brings it down. Because, like, the way I always work is like every game starts at a 9. And then as I play through it, things that start to piss me off lower the score. And then things that make it happy again bring it back up a little bit. So it's like this one, about a 7 for me.
Yeah, the way I think of the scale is like 5 is just like middle of the road. It's
Uh,
not great, not bad,
yeah,
maybe tilting on bad. So that's how I'm thinking of the scale.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But I think we've said all we need to say about Super Mario Land. If you want to play this game, and I think it's worth at least one playthrough in your life, like it's not going to be one I say you go out of your way to go play, but this is actually a really easy one to still access today. You don't need to go out and get an original Game Boy to play it, although that is still a great way to experience it. But it is available on Nintendo Switch Online if for anyone subscribed to the service. So you get a very faithful adaptation of it. Uh, because their Game Boy emulator on Switch Online is actually fairly decent. So that is the easiest way to play it. And then, of course, if you want to do it on modern emulation, other things like that, like totally easy to get a hold of. But yeah. Will, thank you so much for joining me for Game of the Month discussion number 33 of Super Mario Land. This was a fun one. And I am still blown away by 25 million copies sold. Anyway.
I know we're doing outro. Let me throw one more thing.
Yes,
we didn't talk about, but we
Yes.
don't need to talk about this anymore.
Yes.
Legacy, because it did spin off, sequels. It spun off, gave us Wario and the Wario Land series, for kids who unfortunately didn't get that for Christmas. It gave us Mario 3D Land on the 3DS. So despite its jank and limitations, it did spawn a lot of subsequent games that people have really gone on to enjoy.
That's true.
That's a good point. Good point.
True. It's good.
So we shouldn't be so hard on it, maybe.
Hey, I gave it
True.
a 7, man. Like,
I know.
Come on now. I gave it a 7. Anyway, thank you both again for joining us. We'll be back next month with another game and another discussion, and hopefully more new faces. But thank you all for listening to us rant about Super Mario Land. Really appreciate each and every one of you watching. We'll see you all back next month. Later, everybody.
Yep.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.